The true mind can weather all the lies and illusions without being lost. The true heart can tough the poison of hate without being hard. Since the beginning of time, darkness has thrived in the void, but always yields to purifying light. This is what the lion turtle said to Aang before he gave him the ability to energy bend. The technique is very powerful in the Avatar franchise. It allows a user to seal away another bender's ability to bend the elements permanently. This is similar to chi blocking, but obviously on a higher scale. Aang sealed away Ozai's bending because it was the only way to defeat him without killing him. Amon used something similar to energy bending to take a lot of good people's bending away. This begs the question, is the practice of energy bending immoral? If you just look at the context around Aang's situation, you could come to the conclusion that energy bending is good, right? Fire Lord Ozai was about to use the power of Sozin's Comet to destroy the world, or at least defeat the remaining nations and take over as the Emperor of the world. He needed to be stopped. All attempts to end the 100-Year War were amicably useless. Due to Aang's upbringing, he was told that all life is precious. We can see this in his fighting style. When he is airbending, he focuses mostly on avoiding direct damage and redirecting his opponent's attacks. Even when he learns the other elements, he never uses his bending to outright kill anyone. Though you could make some arguments for the Avatar state, that's not 100% Aang. But back to the Fire Lord problem. It was more than just a fear of taking another life. Aang might value life, but he is far from a pacifist. Not only did he have qualms about taking a life, but even his closest allies disagreed with him. Zuko, Katara, and the rest of the gang knew that the only way to end the war was to end Ozai. To add to the pressure, his past lives, Aang's source of wisdom and guidance, told him that when it came to the fate of the world, they were willing to kill or regretted not ending lives to save millions. Aang's concern for taking Ozai's life was more than just personal discomfort, and he knew something had to be done. In this context, when the turtle gave him energy bending, it was a way out. A way to stop the war and spare Ozai's life. If we look at energy bending as a tool for punishment, it would be fitting for benders outside of just killing them. Without bending, Ozai is much easier to deal with. He is not only no longer an immediate threat, but his influence and status as the Fire Lord is also dismantled. For Aang, energy bending was used as an absolute last resort for the worst offenders. When he founded Republic City and during the events of the 100-Year War, Aang put his faith in the system. When institutions like the Republic City Police were founded, he entrusted Toph and her family to keep the streets of Republic City safe. He also entrusted Sokka and the Council to pass judgment when needed. Only when one of the worst and most dangerous criminals in Republic City, Yakone, escaped did Aang act and seal his dangerous bending forever. Yakone was not just a powerful waterbender, but also a bloodbender. He was so powerful, in fact, that he did not need a full moon to bloodbend. We have covered in a previous video that bloodbending is the most dangerous and scariest form of bending. In fact, it is so dangerous that it was even outlawed in Republic City right after its founding through the efforts of Katara. So during Aang's tenure as the Avatar, he used energy bending twice. Once to stop the literal end of the world by sealing away Ozai's firebending, and the other was to stop one of Republic City's worst criminals from getting away. Outside of the Avatar, there has only been one individual who was able to energy bend, making this technique very, very rare and very difficult to learn. Given that the power of energy bending is almost exclusive to the Avatar, and the Avatar is the bridge between the human and spirit world, having them wield this power is moral and just. We have seen the Avatar act as a force of good, but should a power be allowed simply because the people who wield it are good in the moment? Sure, for Aang's specific context, sealing Ozai's bending was the only option. He wasn't willing to end Ozai's life, and he wasn't going to let him destroy the world. However, what are the implications for using energy bending to take another person's bending away? Let's look at the practice in a neutral setting. In order to energy bend, your spirit must be unbendable as you will the other person's spirit. If you show any sign of weakness or bendability, your spirit will be corrupted or taken over by the person you are trying to energy bend. So in essence, what we are looking at is one person exerting their own will onto another to seal away their spirit and their ability to bend. In some sense, energy bending is the same as bloodbending. Bloodbending has a lot of taboos on it already for being a violent and deeply intrusive form of bending. In both bloodbending and energy bending, you're not controlling the elements but a person's very being. By taking advantage of someone's body against their will, you are violating someone's bodily autonomy, something a lot of people hold above all other rights. With energy bending, you aren't taking advantage of someone physically, but spiritually. No one has died from energy bending directly, but the idea of violating someone's bodily autonomy and taking away their ability to bend can be deeply immoral. While we have seen this technique used on evil people like Fire Lord Ozai, energy bending is not dictated simply by the people it is used on. We saw in the Legend of Korra that Amon used his blood bending to mimic energy bending to take people's bending away. While it may not be the same as energy bending, it does serve the same function, so it can be used as an example. He took bending away from criminals and heroes alike, and while it may have been used to further his agenda, was it so different from what Aang did to Ozai? Amon didn't kill Lin Beifong or Lightning Bolt Zolt, but instead brought them down to a normal person's level by force. In order to do this, he violated the bodily autonomy of his victims. When we look at the ability to bend the elements in a vacuum, it is neither good or bad. It's a process that is imbued into a person from birth, and how they want to express that power should be up to the bender, at least if we want to follow the rule of bodily autonomy. It is up to the individual on how they want to conduct themselves and how they govern their own bodies. With energy bending, that right is taken away from them. Something that is a part of them is no longer in their control. If the right to govern your body is a right that should be protected, and energy bending violates that right, then in conclusion, energy bending is immoral. Of course, with everything, context matters. As of the writing of this video, the only beings who can seal away another person's bending is the Avatar. Bloodbenders like Amon might be able to simulate that effect, but so far the Avatar is the only person who can give and take bending away. The Avatar stands to bring peace to all nations and acts as a bridge between humans and spirits. That kind of mindfulness would imply that a certain amount of discretion and wisdom would come with energy bending. Whether we believe energy bending is immoral or not, relies on whether the practice remains exclusively with taking or giving bending abilities. While this practice might be the first thing people think of when they think of energy bending, it's actually just the beginning. Throughout the Legend of Korra, we saw other forms of energy bending. Korra was able to use energy bending to restore Lin Beifong's bending after Amon was defeated. Energy bending might include other abilities like astral projection and creating portals to the spirit world. The key issue still is the morality of taking and giving bending away. Considering all the arguments that have been put forth in this video, I believe that energy bending is moral, even though it violates bodily autonomy. The process is reversible. Just like Aang was able to take away Ozai and Yakon's bending, Korra was able to restore Lin's bending. Unlike blood bending, energy bending can be mended. You can't really uncontrol someone forcibly, right? I think its ability to give back that which was taken is a very important factor. Let's look back at Aang's conflict with Ozai. He took away his bending, sure, but he was spared from death. This could open up the possibility of rehabilitation. With his bending gone, it would have been possible for Ozai to eventually see the error of his ways and possibly get his bending back. Now, we know that didn't happen in the comics and is super unlikely considering Ozai's character. But what if a lesser criminal had their bending taken away as part of a punishment? Even if their bodily autonomy was violated as part of their punishment, having that bending restored could be a sign of growth and redemption. Perhaps this practice would be used as a deterrent from those who would use their talents to harm and abuse other people. I highly doubt that this technique would be taught to anyone else but the Avatar, given how dangerous and powerful it is. Of course, if this technique becomes too widespread, that could only make the Avatar a bigger target to those who would abuse and corrupt such a power. With this in mind, redemption and rehabilitation could be an alternative avenue to harsh sentences and punishments. We have to remember that the world of Avatar is moving forward. If Legend of Korra is anything to look at, the world is not as big as it used to be. People are connected globally, and governments are able to bring checks and balances to previously unchecked powers like the Avatar. Whether future avatars like it or not, they will have to answer to the elected representatives of an even more modern world. With all this talk about taking and giving bending away, we forget that there are more abilities that fall under the umbrella of energy bending. Airbenders have always been more spiritually inclined than the other three kinds of benders, and as a result, Jinora was able to astral project. This ability seems to be loosely related to energy bending. The line between spiritual powers and energy bending is pretty thin. But the larger point I am trying to make here is that the impact energy bending will have on the world of Avatar going forward might vary from the techniques Aang first learned from the lion turtles. As it stands now, the fact that only the Avatar has this specific ability now shows that even if the act of energy bending someone's bending away is immoral, the power will be checked by the rules and governments Avatar Aang sought to instill when he worked on unifying the nations. Before we end the video, we'll leave you with one last did you know about energy bending. Did you know? The concept of taking away and giving bending abilities stems from Chinese martial arts fables, where the protagonist would take away the villain's abilities as a merciful alternative to taking their life.